All right, we're live.
Yeah, we are.
LVE
And yeah, LIVE live.
or the
Yeah, look it up. Look up live.
right here. I'll set it free.
So yeah, that what you missed last time basically was I put a tint of green over the hat and the back of his
Yeah.
hair, side of his face, his ear, a little bit on his chest. I'm gonna do a second layer of that and darken up the gray in the band. So I thought it would be a good idea to start talking books too.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we've been talking books a little bit, but
Oh, yeah.
I want to try to invite people that are trying to sell either their own books, like crowdfunded books,
Yeah.
or and small publishers, because we know a few. And I thought that might be an interesting perk to the channel. I really kind of, I don't know, I'm having a hard time some days with just doing the same old, because it's not, I mean, I didn't start this channel with the intention of just doing random artwork. The intention when I started this channel was to build up a platform to help independent artists and creators, writers,
Yeah.
have a place to not only pitch their work, but maybe talk about things that they're interested in, or that they've read that they're interested in. With the writer's strike going on and all this other stuff, like I look around and I'm seeing that it's not a great loss with the writer's strike.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I understand why they're striking, and I overall think it's probably.
Do you know why they're striking?
Well, part of it is they're worried they're going to be replaced with AI,
Yep, that's part of it.
and that's a valid concern, I think. Even though, here's the bad part. Like I was watching, I think his last name is Conover, Adam Conover. He used to have a show. Oh crap! What was that? Oh, Adam Ruins Everything. Kind of like Penn and Teller's BS show. He would go around and just take whatever contrarian view he wants to take, and he'd break it down as to why he thinks whatever he thinks. Whatever. It's kind of entertaining. It was often somewhat misleading, but overall entertaining. And the guy's on the he's in the Writers Guild and he's in the SAG Guild or Screen Actors Guild.
Okay.
And so he's on the negotiation team for both. And he was talking. He's like, when I'm trying to make something funny, there's no way an AI can do it. There's just no way. And he was going through because I used it in class. It was a wonderful discussion of the rhetorical situation, even if the guy wasn't actually using that term. And he was really talking about how he has to think about what his audience is going to know, what's going to be top of mind, what's going to,
right,
register and all that stuff. And it's like an AI can't do that.
And
so,
well, the one thing the AI can't do when you're talking about all that, I mean, they can to a degree, depending on what's input, like the things that are popular comedy stuff. If you put in popular comedy jokes or whatever, they can get pacing of it. But what they can't do is gauge a crowd.
Right.
You know, they can't
So
figure out if it's
they can't read a room. They
right.
can't.
If it's working for the crowd. That's
Right.
what I was thinking. I mean,
So I'm not over. I mean, I'm not overly worried about AI replacing writers, but at the same time, I think that studios are not writers. Studios are businesses, and if they can cut costs, even if the product is shittier, they will. Because I mean,
well,
how many
obviously.
times? Yeah, but I mean, like, how many times have they ruined good IP because they, some producer has some stupid idea,
Yeah,
or
like,
they're.
Cole.
I'm just saying, how many George Lucases have to have Ewoks because that's another toy, versus Wookiees, which would make a heck of a lot more sense. So, I think it's a valid concern, even though I don't think the quality, like, I think there will always be a place for quality. I just don't think it's, so I don't think you have to worry too much about there, but you have to be able to create quality, and there are a lot of people who aren't.
Kind of reminds me of the argument. Yeah, I mean, it's a big concern in the art community too. But it kind of reminds me of the argument of whether there's going to be actual hardbound books in the future.
Yeah.
You remember that argument? It wasn't all that long ago, like maybe 10 years ago, when they started doing digital and becoming big. And they were all worried about digital replacing
Books.
actual books.
Yeah, and you couldn't ever share your library, and you couldn't. I mean, there are a whole bunch of arguments as to why it's terrible. Plus, you have things like, like those James Bond books. They're going to go through and change them, which would have been way easier on digital.
Well, they have on digital.
Yeah.
They're just going to re-release the Bond books.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's going to be the audience for Bond books nowadays that there was back then. Because you read them and you see how they.
Yeah. They're not my favorite. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, this is kind of interesting and whatever. But I mean, sometimes it's like, why are you telling me what they're having for lunch? Like every meal they have, he's describing. And I'm just like, are you just filling up the pages?
They did that in Dracula. So I think maybe it's a transition from apostolic approach.
Could be. I mean, my thought was maybe he's trying to help the reader go to some, it's not necessarily that he's anywhere exotic, but if you can describe these meals that most people probably aren't going to have.
Well, Brian Lumley did that very well in Necroscope. Like no, not Necroscope. Well, I guess a little bit in Necroscope to a degree in Necroscope, but more the Psychomech series, where because before he was a writer, he was MI5. He's been all these places, so like he'll talk about Mediterranean restaurants and what they serve, but I mean, it doesn't become. I don't think it becomes intrusive on the story. It's just detail, but it's not so obtrusive that it's like, oh, he's describing a meal again. You know what I mean? It's like they're having a meal, and you know what they're having, but it's the conversation around the meal that's really what the interesting thing is.
Yeah.
I know in Dracula, it was really kind of a travelogue for a lot.
Well, that's kind of what I got.
That kind of makes it hard, inaccessible for some people, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, because people are impatient nowadays, and you see that in writing and what's popular that they're reading and what they accept for fiction and what they want for fiction. It's how Law and Order came to be popular. Came to be popular because it's that going back to Burger King. It's my way right away. So they give you the story within the first 10 minutes. You know what's going on, what the mystery is, and a good idea of what the suspect is. Because in the first 20 minutes, they have to do the police work so that they could do the courtroom part in the next.
Yeah.
So I started the short story for that submission.
Yeah.
I'm using well, I'm using you and Jake as characters to a degree. Like I want to. I'm giving nods to you guys more than actually using you as full blown characters.
Yeah.
But like the spelling for Brett is older spelling, like an older English spelling, because apparently Brett actually comes from Breton.
Yeah.
The name comes from the name for Britain before it was Britain. Which I had to do a little research to figure it out because I wanted to do that because I'm kind of writing a kind of pseudo military historical fiction because you know the military part.
Yeah.
But it's pseudo historical fiction because it's going to be written in definitely a historical fiction style, but it's not going to be. It's definitely going to be a fantasy.
I was talking about. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I thought because you shared the Here Be Dragons.
Yeah.
I was thinking about a twist on the dragon story. Because, you know, I was like, do I hedge my bets? You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't really want to say too much online.
That dragon one.
I'm going to throw something in the private chat so that you can see it.
Okay. But that dragon one, I've got a story that you've read. Let's put it that way. That you were not very fond of.
Oh boy.
But like the publisher that said they wanted it, I haven't heard from in almost a year. Like next month's a year. And I'll try one more time, you know, hearing from them, and then after that, I'm shopping it around again. Like I'm not gonna. It's kind of ridiculous to wait a year.
The Magic Bone story.
Yeah. Because that kind of just nice. That's fun.
Yes, but how do you do that seriously?
I don't know.
Right.
Well, I mean, you have. I suppose you could have the normal target. Here, we're gonna have to talk in code.
Yeah, well, we can always talk about it later or whatever. But like, I was just sharing my idea because it was like one of those things where like, how do you twist a dragon story? Well, that's how you twist a dragon story, right?
Yeah. Anyway. Now it was kind of funny last night as I was just as I was going to sleep. I got this idea. You know how you'll often talk about this, but other writers have about start with the end in mind.
Yep.
And I swear I have a last line, but I have no idea what the story is to get there. But it's a great last line. Like it was good enough. I was like I nudged my wife. I was like, hey, does this sound like I'm ripping off somebody? Because this is too good of a line that someone hasn't used this before. You know what I mean? So
Well, yeah.
she didn't sound familiar to her, but I was like, this is if I can crack that open, that'll be a great one. I'll put it in private.
Well, when I was talking about writing one source, it wasn't like the last one. Well, maybe I'll read it and go, oh yeah, that's the last line that'll do it, but I don't think I've ever read the last line of the story and that last line be like that made or broke the story,
I don't know. What's it? Casino Royale. If it wasn't for the last line, I would have hated that book.
Well, all right, so you like the last line.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't think that made or broke the book.
Well, I'm just saying that was the one thing I salvaged from that experience.
Like when you watch the new movie with Daniel Craig, that's pretty much an updated version of the book.
Oh, I agree, but except for it's better. It's just
it's only updated. If you look at it, it's pretty much the same thing, just updated.
I agree. But they're not explaining how to play cards and all this other stuff, so it's...
Well, no, that's one of the things that a book does that the movie wouldn't have to.
Right.
He does the same thing in Goldfinger. You read Goldfinger, right?
Yeah.
It's actually, he did the same thing in Goldfinger and Moonraker. He talks about cards. He talks about cards because that's Bond's specialty.
Yeah.
Which is something that I didn't really know until I read the books. Like, I mean, you always see him in casinos and you always see him, hobnobbing with the rich.
Right. What?
I'm just reading that.
Oh.
I don't know. I guess you can take that several different ways. And
well, I know.
Because I don't know what the story is, I have no idea how to take that.
Neither do I! I'm like, this is the weirdest thing to just have a line that you just...
Do you remember Bruce Holland Rogers when he did the articles for Flash Fiction Online when you were around then?
Maybe.
That was in the early days of Flash Fiction Online. Son of a bitch, I was afraid that happened. A spritzer bottle would have made a hell of a lot of difference. These colors stay pretty moist.
Somebody hates it.
Now, look at that shit.
Never understood why people have an aversion to the word moist, but they do.
Well, I know Joe's older brother, who we talk about sometimes, doesn't like creamy peanut butter because he thinks it's like baby food.
Okay, I guess.
Well, and that's what I said. Well, okay.
I was way more familiar with peanut butter than I ever was with baby poop until my children were born. So that would be like a regressive
How
aversion.
many kids were in your family?
Pardon me?
How many kids were like growing up? How many kids were in your family?
Oh, I was the youngest of two.
Okay, so you were the youngest of two, and that probably explains that. Steve was the oldest of five.
Ah.
4. So
Yeah, because
he
doesn't
probably
Jake have a
saw.
huge family?
He probably saw a lot of baby poop.
Yeah, probably. I did not. Not until I had children, and then I saw enough to last.
Right? Right?
I still remember when. So, Thaddeus was allergic to milk,
Yeah, you're
and
saying that.
he crapped up his onesie one night so bad I cut it off of him, and told Rhonda the next day what I'd done. She didn't get angry, but you could tell she wasn't real happy. And I'm like, "What's wrong?" She's like, "Well, that was the onesie that his older brother came home from the hospital in."
Right. Right.
I'm like, "Well, yeah." I'm like, "You can't blame me for ruining it. That was Thaddeus' fault. Don't put it on the new baby."
Yeah, if you really wanted to save it, you really wanted to save it. That's what they make shadow boxes.
Yeah. So, whatever. So it goes.
I think I told you the story where Logan, like our oldest, was he was still little like in diapers. I want to say maybe 1,
Okay.
something like that. Maybe 2, because Amanda might have been pregnant with Kate, but I don't think so. Like, we stepped out of the car for something, and we had like a little Ford Aspire, like a little
Yeah.
car. And when we opened the door to get back in it, it was like, oh, the smell was so bad.
Nice.
Like, oh, I know it's shit, right? So we look in the back seat, and he's kind of shadowed where he is in the back seat.
Okay.
But it takes me a minute to realize that he's got shit streaked across his eye. Like, he looks like Commando. Like, he's put shit smeared across his eye, in his ear, in his nose. So it blew out the side of his diaper is what it did. It blew out the side of his diaper and his onesie. And he just scooped up a handful of it, rubbed it in his car seat material. Oh yeah, fucking, I got scratched his face and rubbed his face and his nose or whatever. And we're like,
Nice.
yeah, that was pretty bad. We were at the mall, and I had this light gray shirt on, and we were doing something at the mall. I don't remember, but we're like away, almost on, no, definitely on the other side of the mall from where the car was.
Yeah.
And I started feeling like I got a wet belly, so I looked down and diarrhea, man, all over my light gray shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I really couldn't. Tried to rush for the bathrooms, and I'm like, oh crap, all the diapers are in the car. Which is on the complete other side of the mall. We first brought him home from the hospital. She opened his diaper up, the air hit him, and he pissed right in the air.
Yeah.
And it landed right in his eyeball.
Nice.
So, first thing he did was pissed in his own eye and then looked at her like it was her fault.
That's funny.
Speaking of baby poop and all that, first time I changed his diaper and I thought I was going to be clever, I grabbed the diaper, I was going to slide it under him, and I lifted his legs, and it was like a Play-Doh fun factory. I squeezed shit right all over the back of my hand.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, the fun stuff of children and all the things that come out of them.
It's an interesting way to put it, but yeah, it's all the things that come out of them. And all the ways it comes out of them.
Yeah.
Not just all the things, but all the manners in which it presents itself. And the timing with which it presents itself, too. Talk about it. Our daughter, the other day, she was like 3, maybe 4 or something like that.
Yeah.
A man had her in a Chinese restaurant. She sat down, and when she sat down, she bounced and puked right on the floor, like projectile vomited. And she got up and grabbed her stuff, and she's like, "Yeah, I think we should go."
Probably.
It wasn't Amanda that said that. That was Kate. She's like, "Yeah, I think it's time to go." Now that was an interesting treatise on baby shit. Fluids. Guess it was more than just fluids, right?
What?
I said that was an interesting treatise on baby shit. And then I was like, no, I guess fluids. And then I was like, I guess more than fluids.
Yeah.
No, so far as I can tell, the black is some of the slowest drying shit.
Hold on a second. All right. I was showing my son something about it's a new way of writing some basic test questions that I have that I wanted to see if he thought, like, what, because he's my student now too,
Right.
just to see if he liked this format better than other formats I've used. And I think it actually worked. I mean, I think it works out pretty well, and it was fast to do. So I'm kind of thinking that's the way I'm going to do it from now on. The problem is, or the real question is do I go back? Because, you know, once you have tests and what, you don't have to make them new every year, especially not with vocab. But I don't know if I want to go, like, start changing out the old ones, or if I'm going to be lazy. I mean, right now I figured this out because I was writing it for a new class. I suppose I'll wait and see also what the actual students who have to do that test tomorrow, how they cry.
Are they what?
Cry.
Try.
Yeah, because no matter what, students hate it. I mean, that's just one of those things you just have to accept. So, whether or not they'll see it as an improvement, I mean, I guess that's their idea of an improvement is just give us A's.
Right.
Well, suppose I could do that. You won't learn anything, though.
You don't want us to work?
Yeah. This is just. I mean, oh my goodness. The stuff that. Like, yeah, there's a vocab test tomorrow, but if you're not ready for it, you don't have to take it. You can wait. Like, I don't mind. I really don't. I'll start freezing you out of other assignments next week if you don't start making it up, and it affects your grade instantaneously. So, like, if you don't have, once I make the test, it's a 0 until you get a better score. So, you know, it's in their best interest to get it done. But they act like, did you ever tell us we're having a test on Friday? I'm like, literally, like the first day, I said there will be a vocab test on Fridays. Every Friday. We're in school and it's Friday. There's a vocab test. Sometimes I wonder if I'm speaking Sanskrit, because
Can you speak Sanskrit?
I don't know. I think so. I think. I mean, not me, but
Because I thought Sanskrit was a written language.
yeah. But I suppose I could look it up. But you know the song "Duel of the Fates"?
Yeah.
I think that was based off of, like, they put stuff into Sanskrit.
John Williams, you mean?
I just think that's what the lyrics were from.
The lyrics?
Yeah.
Well, I knew that there was voices, but I didn't think they were actually saying words.
Yeah, I guess they are. I mean, my favorite thing ever was somebody kind of made fun of it. They're like, corn on the cob. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it does kind of sound like corn on the cob. So. The dumb things that make us entertained.
Right? Let that drive for a couple minutes.
Although one of my former students today, he posted this thing that said Nirvana was more influential than the Beatles. And I'm just like, what are you smoking? Like, I like Nirvana a lot.
There's a...
I can't see how they'd
I
be
think
more
there's a whole
influential.
argument about the Beatles that's unspoken and probably better left that way.
Oh, do you not like the Beatles?
It's not that I don't like the Beatles, it's that they stole a lot of the shit.
Oh, I know.
So it's not actually the Beatles that were influential, it's the people they stole from, like Chuck Berry. And
Or it could be argued their marketing was very influential. So that changed a lot of things.
their
But
marketing.
yeah, because
I
there's a
think
good
that was
argument.
an era that
Oh, dude, come on. They were the first boy band. They were huge because of marketing.
well, I don't know.
And I like the Beatles. I'm just saying, I can recognize that they definitely had.
There were a lot of bands that came out around then, and like I was just doing some research on some of the older bands now, and you'd be surprised. But when you talk about, I don't even know if they can actually be called the first boy band, but that's it's one of those debatable things.
Right.
But they were influential in a way that I wouldn't say was influential on music.
Okay.
Like most of the stuff that, like I said, a lot of the stuff that they had, they're either regurgitated riffs or stolen outright. They just changed the tempos and stuff like that. So I don't want to say that they weren't good or they didn't do long-lasting stuff and their impressions didn't reverberate throughout the music world. But I don't think they changed music much. Like I'm talking about the actual music, the actual composition of the music, the performance of the music. I don't think that they were doing much different than Elvis was doing, and he changed quite a bit of music. I don't think. I don't know. See, the thing is I don't know very many bands that'll say, yeah, the Beatles. The Beatles changed everything for us. But on the other hand, I don't know very many bands that say that about Nirvana either.
Well, that's what
And
I mean.
fact, I actually heard a lot. Now, it's not Nirvana. You're talking about really Kurt Cobain, because Nirvana still exists. They just changed their name. And now they're talking about how simple their stuff is, and yeah, it's never been really overly difficult. It's just the flat notes and the flat tones of voices and the teen angst that they brought with it, because the Beatles were more love songs.
Right.
I mean, don't get me wrong, they had a couple here and there, but they were more love songs. Their influence, I would say, on the industry was they did a lot of, I'm not going to play here if James Brown can't play here type of thing.
Right.
They did not approve of any kind of discrimination, and I get that. I support that. They did force a lot of change that way, and that's a great thing. But I don't think it's the music that changed because of that. I think what they did was what they were really good at, and I'm gonna double down on this. What they were really good at is not just taking music, but taking music and rearranging it so that it sounded like them. And there's another band that does that nowadays. That's actually done that their whole career. That has been a big influential band, and that's Metallica.
Yeah.
Because if you go back and listen to almost any Diamond Head song, you'll hear Metallica's riffs.
Yeah. Although, I mean, there was stuff that Nirvana did that was a complete ripoff too. So,
I'm sure. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Art imitates art, right?
right.
What was it? Van Gogh. One of the more famous artists is like, if you're gonna steal from the best.
I like that.
So, I mean, yeah, right. To a degree, you're gonna try to take it and make it your own anyway. But
Yeah.
a lot of bands, you don't. The originality was Diamond Head's riffs. If you listen to Diamond Head's riffs or Ostergoth back in the day, and the bands that actually James Hetfield was wearing their T-shirts while he was ripping off their riffs, the riff master, right?
Yeah.
So, and don't get me wrong, because that's exactly what they did. They took them and they made them their own. Am I Evil by Metallica, even though it's a cover, direct cover, sounds much better than Diamond Head's Am I Evil. Because they have different equipment, they have different, crunch, they have different timing, sounds cleaner. Diamond Head sound, there's a lot more of a punk sound in Diamond Head than Metallica. You can hear that punk sound in Overkill.
Okay.
But you're not going to hear it as much in Metallica or Megadeth. Those guys are copying King Diamond and then copying Diamond Head. Those are two big bands. So if I was going to say that a couple of bands that have really affected the music industry,
Yeah.
I think Rush would be my number one.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree, because
Now, and don't get me wrong, because like I love Rush, but Rush had the ability to do everything in one song.
yeah,
They had the ability to go from heavy metal to hard rock to light rock to reggae and back, and some classical in one song and not miss a lick.
a friend of mine was listening to a podcast, I guess, about Rush. He was never really a big Rush fan. So he asked me, like, what's my favorite Rush album? And I said Moving Pictures, because all around, like, it's just, I mean, it's kind of like an easy answer, I guess, because Tom Sawyer's on there, and most people are going to say Tom Sawyer's like the most popular Rush song. But
It is the most popular Rush song. Everybody knows Tom Sawyer.
right, and but I'm also like,
Well, everybody that's been listening to music for more than
Right.
the last 2 decades.
but I always think it's funny that, like, okay, I know, I mean, there's not a bad song on the entire album, like in any way, shape, or form. They're all good, but but that doesn't mean they're like my favorite song is on that album, and it doesn't mean that's the one I want to listen to the most. I mean, it's just kind of funny. It's just that I know that it's a solid album. That it's what got me into Rush, and knowing this guy's taste in music generally, I was like, it's a solid one to listen to. And so he went and listened to it, and he was like, he said, he's like, yeah, I now I know why I never really got into Rush. He goes, because there's so much going on, I can't relax. Like I'm just trying to figure out all the stuff that's going on. And I'm like, well, okay, I get it. He's like, but
when was this that happened?
this week.
Oh shit! Then why didn't you tell him to go listen to Clockwork Angels?
Well, I like Clockwork Angels. And,
That's
if he says he wants another album, that's probably within the top 5 of the ones I'd recommend. It just kind of depends on what he's looking for. Because that's a solid album too.
The reason that I mentioned that is because it's got a more mainstream sound to some of the songs. The Garden, the U2B.
Yeah.
And then you've got that kind of way out there songs too. Clockwork Angel is kind of an off-time piece too. So you got pretty much the whole array of Rush, but you've got a more accessible sound. So he could actually hear a couple of songs that he could relax to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. And there's some of the stuff. I mean, what I always liked about Clockwork Angels was that if you know Rush, like there are certain like callbacks to previous work, which they never really did. And it's like, oh yeah, that's kind of similar to this and kind of similar to this. And
right,
it's not like it's derivative, but it's just more like, you know, a tip of the hat to
it does
their
feel
history.
like you've been there. But Rush is one of the reasons that I say Rush is such a influential band is that all of the bands that we've named, except for maybe the Beatles, have been influenced by Rush.
Yeah.
Nirvana has been influenced by Rush. Dave Grohl is big influenced by Rush.
Yeah.
Dream Theater is definitely influenced by Rush. Metallica is influenced by Rush. At one point, they said that was their favorite band. You know, so
Yeah, they wanted Geddy Lee to produce one of their albums. It just didn't work out. But
right.
yeah, you can find interviews where they said they were looking to get Geddy Lee to produce their record, which I just think is crazy.
And two more that I would say that had really a big effect on music is Faith No More.
Really?
Oh yeah, and Biohazard.
I mean, I like Faith No More, but I mean, I could kind of see some of the influence, although I don't know if it's really them. So,
Faith No More. How? So, what do you know about Faith No More?
not a ton.
I was guessing that when you said that.
Well, I mean,
No, I'm just saying I was guessing that by the way you said that because Faith No More, even prior to having what's his face as the singer, the album before that, they did like We Care a Lot and Subway to Venus, and they've always kind of been a Rush like trippy band.
okay.
They have, and they introduced the kind of rap sound. That's the same thing with Biohazard. Biohazard kind of did it with metal. They introduced new metal, which new metal had a lot less lead, and they did it by also involving that kind of rap sound that you hear later on with like Tool and
Yeah.
Linkin Park and stuff like that. I'd say if there was no Faith No More, there'd be no Linkin Park. And all the bands that shot off from Linkin Park that are like that.
Well,
Nirvana.
that's what I wondered if you were going with the whole rap rock thing. And that's why I say I'm not sure if it's really from them or not. Because I don't.
It's
I'm thinking of it.
It's not just rap music. It's the ability to integrate all of those pieces.
Right.
It's
But
not
I mean,
like you're not going to hear a Faith No More song that's pretty much just rap.
oh, I know.
It goes all over the place. Mike Patton, that's what I was thinking of. Mike Patton has this thing about eating. So he's describing tastes and oral fixations pretty much, which is another different thing. But if you listen, the keyboards, the bass, the lead rhythm, and Mike Patton, when he went into Faith No More, not only did he um, not only did he kind of forward that rap into a song.
Yeah.
If you listen, he uses his voice as an instrument. He's one of two singers I know that really do that. Like, and I'm not talking about like, because Freddie Mercury did it too, but he did it always singing. As far as the way he presented it, but Mike Patton does it like in background vocals and background sounds, just sounds. Phantomos, that was one of his side projects where it's only just vocals. It's like an a cappella music thing. And the other band is Blind Guardian. And Blind Guardian is like a heavier version and a more theatrical version. It's like what you get if you mash up Freddie Mercury, Faith No More, and maybe a little bit of Rush, but also Led Zeppelin, where that whole telling fantasy stories and dipping into Tolkien's world and all that. But if you actually listen to it, have you heard the song "And Then There Was Silence"?
No.
I think that's a brilliant song. It's a 15-minute song.
Yeah.
About the fall of Troy from Cassandra's point of view. So at the end, it's starting to happen.
Well, when we're done here, I will check that out.
It's really brilliant. Some people don't like it because it's very, very theatrical, but and German is their first language, so it doesn't sound like it. He does a good job, but there's accents on the words, and there's a lot of words because he uses his voice as an instrument. And he played bass while he's using his voice to do like all these different tracks and different sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my favorite subject anyway, so like one of my favorite subjects.
You ever heard of a band called Riverside?
Nope. I've heard of a bar called Riverside.
Well, I think they're Polish.
You call it River Dive.
But I don't know how I stumbled across them. But they're more prog rock than I would say they're closer to Tool than anything. But I don't know. Them and Carnival and Tool, kind of the three that I've been listening to a lot lately. Because I don't know.
I'm not a big Tool fan.
Yeah, I know you've said that before.
Or the other one,
Carnival,
Rage Against the Machine.
Oh, well, that's wildly different.
Well, yeah, but they're the same type of music.
Okay.
Like I'm loosely. I mean, it's kind of alternative metal-y, It's hard to.
Yeah.
Explain.
I just think that Tool's a little bit more, is a little darker, more somber, and Rage Against the Machine is angrier.
Rage Against the Machine is communist.
Well, I agree, and they're angry.
It's not even. It's like they've come out and said it.
Oh, I know. Yeah, they're communists, except for the fact that without their capitalist backing, they wouldn't be able to do anything.
Right.
And it's like
they're not giving up that major money they're making, but
no. That's what I think about all those stupid artists that want to say they're communists. I'm like, really? Then give up all your money.
They're socialists. They're democratic socialists. That means that they want their money, but they want you to give up your shit.
Yeah, basically. They want to be able to vote your money out of your pocket and into theirs.
Right.
Ugh. I saw something the other day that I thought was kind of interesting about just the question. Didn't read anything more about it, but
You know who
why
Phil
is
Labonte is?
huh?
You know who Phil Labonte is?
No.
He is lead singer of All That Remains.
Oh, well, yeah, no, don't know.
What's that?
Don't know him.
They just did a cover of Thunder Rolls not that long ago, but he filled in for Ivan Moody in Five Finger Death Punch just like
Okay.
last week or something like that. But he called out Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine as a communist a long time ago, and people were like, "Oh no, he isn't." And see, both of those guys are veterans.
Yeah.
So like they're both, you know, kind of face off type of thing. But Phil Labonte, I think the song that I really like the most from them is 2 Weeks. You might want to check that out. That's pretty good. But he's on Timcast now. Like he regularly appears on Timcast. So.
Okay.
He's definitely strictly libertarian, and like I said, the libertarian principles are that no two libertarians agree what it means to be a libertarian.
Very true.
And he was saying that's why they'll never have a real libertarian candidate, because nobody can agree on what that means.
Well, what's funny is it's not like you can really say Republicans all agree on the same thing or Democrats all agree on the same thing.
No, but when it's not Republicans or Democrats, it's conservatives and liberals. Because conservatives are conservative to what the Constitution says, and liberals want to define it as as liberally as they can. So that's the main difference. I mean, even that's why you can consider libertarian conservative when they don't say necessarily believe in God, or they're not necessarily against abortion or something like that. Those stances, conservatives are conservative to the Constitution. It's not. Republicans are also conservative to religion to a degree too. Not necessarily the same religion, but religious principles. Liberals generally aren't. So I mean, there's unless they can win an argument by using it. So, like, and we're not supposed to be dipping into politics, but like what I'm saying though is that there are binding factors. Whereas libertarians, the only thing that I tend to see as a bonding factor is small government. Like, get the government out of our houses, get the government out of our business, all that kind of stuff.
We need to get corporations out of our houses.
How do you do that? Everything that you have in your house is made by a corporation, pretty much.
Yeah, that's okay.
Unless you
the
have
corporation's not there,
okay.
unless you have a smart house.
That's okay. That's funny because it's the same principle. You either okay it or you don't. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, except for, I mean, oh my, there was an article about a guy, and I just kept thinking, you are such an idiot. Because his whole house was a smart house. Like, everything was hooked up and hooked up to the network and everything. And I guess an Amazon driver thought he heard a racist response when he dropped a package off at the guy's door. And nobody was home, and so they thought it might be from the Ring door, the camera thing. And Amazon shut down his whole house. And it's like, and then, okay, so that should already terrify you.
I don't think that they should have the right to do that.
Well, I don't either. But
once you own it, it's no longer Amazon's; it's yours.
well, that's kind of what I think. But again,
I don't think that's the corporation's fault. I think that's fucking lobbyists' fault that allow that shit.
Well, I'm just saying the guy whose house was basically locked down. He became Amish for like 5 days. He was like, I'm thinking about canceling some of these things. I'm like, thinking? Like, no, you're done. That's it. Darwin Award for you. You're an idiot. I can't imagine.
I refuse to do it. Like, I know everybody talks technology, this and all that's so great and blah, 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 but why the fuck would you do that? Why would you have access to everything? I don't even like them having access to, my buying history, even though I know that they're going to.
Right.
I don't like that they can mine that shit out and sell that shit out. Pardon me. So, as for allowing them access to my TV, my radio, my lights, my electricity, my phone, no fucking way.
Yeah, and they always couch, well, that's why we'll know if something's going wrong at your house. Like, who will know? Me, not you.
Yeah, right. I'm the person that needs to know what's going wrong in my house, if there's anything going wrong in my house.
Or like, there's a guy, I forget what his name is, I've seen a couple of his videos on YouTube, where like, he had a scanner copier thing, and he just wanted it to scan, really. He did it, and it's from HP. He didn't need to print anything, he just wanted to scan it so he could email it to somebody. And HP said they couldn't do it because he was out of ink, or he hadn't paid for his ink subscription. He's like, I don't want to buy ink. I don't need ink. I just want to scan the document. And they wouldn't do it. They locked his device. It's just like, this is... I'm like, all right, that's cool. I guess I know a brand not to buy from.
Well, and that's why I don't do, like... So, we've seen these submission calls that talk about payment through PayPal. PayPal withheld $50 from George Martin. Now, it's not because he's George Martin that I'm bringing it up, but they told him he couldn't spend his $50 in the way that he wanted to spend his $50. What?
Yeah, what was he going to
You're
spend it
tell
on?
Me how I can and can't spend my money? And so their excuse is that they're not a bank. They don't have to release that money for whatever. Like, excuse me? You don't have to release my money to me for whatever I want it for? So I don't do business, really, through PayPal. Unless I absolutely have to. Like I bought that Dale Keelan werewolf shirt that Anna Presti was selling.
But you have to buy, I mean...
I had to buy it through there because that's the only way he accepted the money.
Oh, okay. I'm just saying, if I want to buy something and PayPal says, no, you can't do that,
right.
I would be like, okay, that's cool. But I would transfer the money out. Like I would
Well, and that's what George Martin was trying to do, but they were denying him to do that.
Oh, they wouldn't even let him have his money at all?
Yeah, they froze his account.
Well, I mean, that's what they did with those. Well, anyway.
He claimed that it was a religious thing, but I think that's bullshit. I think that was just another way for Martin to poke at conservatism. But
no, I don't think it's.
he's like, oh, the religious saying I couldn't spend money on this or that because they didn't have their religious principles didn't agree. And,
Oh, that's BS.
right.
That's 100% BS.
I think that's bullshit, but I do know they withheld his money. And I've seen that happen with Facebook money.
Yeah,
So-
but that's
So I
not
don't-
conservative things doing that. That's
No, I didn't say it was. He said it was.
right, I know. And I'm saying I call shenanigans on that.
Oh, I agree. Well, what I'm saying is that I don't, regardless of why, regardless of the motivation, it's my money. If I want it now,
Yeah.
you need to give it to me. It's mine. I cannot think of a legitimate reason for them to be able to say, "Oh no, you can't have it."
Well, I mean, banks are trying to do that.
I don't think that's legitimate either, and that's
I don't either.
honestly, I really hate banks too, but
I mean, it's one of those things like, do you want people to have no faith in your financial institutions? If you can just say, we don't like your politics, I think we'll just cut you off. I don't know how that's not theft, and I would treat it as theft, I guess.
how's that looking?
Right?
Right?
Yeah. I swear to God, dog, if you came up here to ask to go out, you and I are going to have words. Like, it's okay if you came up for lovin's. I can do that. I'm just going to be mad if she's like, yeah, okay, I want to go outside now. Because there are people downstairs.
And those people that are downstairs, I'm assuming, know what you're doing.
Yeah, they do. But, they don't
Yeah, very
necessarily
important.
know the dog is doing this. She's been kind of needy tonight. I don't know why. Like, I came home and she ran to me and I was the last person home. She runs to me and then she wanted a hug. I was like, all right. Like, she wouldn't let me go by without putting her hands up on me and getting a hug. So I don't know how they neglected you, dog. I won't. I will give you lovin's. My wife gets jealous of the dog. It kind of makes me chuckle.
She wants to get that.
Well, it's just one of those things where the dog runs and, is thrilled that I'm home and, so she gets attention first. And I'm like, well, you ran to the door. I mean, the dog will wake up from a dead sleep and be like, whoa! And come get me. So. Ugh.
So I've got to find out the name of it. I'm reading a book.
Yeah.
I'm reading several books, but this one in particular. Do you have NetGalley?
Have what?
NetGalley?
I don't even know what that is.
Oh. NetGalley is basically free advanced reader copy.
Really?
Yep. But you have to do a review.
Oh.
So I have a blog that I do once in a while. And they let me have advanced reader copies, and now I'm like, I talk about what I like to read on my like on my YouTube channel,
Yeah.
Facebook, X, on pretty much everything. So anyway, I got this book that I'm reading it, and I'm like less than a chapter into it, and I'm like, Brett would fucking love this book. So it's set. It's ostensibly a murder mystery.
Okay.
I'm 3 chapters in, and I haven't gotten to the murder yet.
Okay.
It's a priest, an ordained priest, Catholic priest, and an ordained Protestant minister in the 1300s that he's writing his memoirs, and this is one of them. So I haven't read the other books, but that's what the books are consisting of. It kind of has a little bit of the feel of the Mark Hodder books.
Okay. He did
Except
the
for,
Spring Heel Jack ones, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the pair that I'm using as an example is like the relationship between, what is it, swine, fern, the two main characters. So this one is Mercurial, and he's 80 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
But he's writing his memoirs because he's got nothing else to do, and he's got this younger priest actually scribing for him.
Mm-hmm.
So the scribe actually will scribe when he asks a question, and Mercurial answers his question, and it interrupts the prose, but it does it in kind of sarcastic way.
All right.
It doesn't interrupt it for long. It just really shows characterization and personality of both the actual narrator and the guy that's recording it. So it's really got a lot of good character, and I know it's leading up to the murder. I guess he actually starts off with technically finding the body, but he doesn't get into anything. He has to backtrack. But he does it in such a manner, it's really kind of charming. It's like this old guy so he's a teacher and a priest, a teacher at a college that is Protestant based.
Okay.
In a country that's divided between Catholic and Protestant. And he's getting ready for a debate that he doesn't really want to do, but the rector, headmaster, I'm guessing is the same thing, signed them up for without him really wanting to. It's just crotchety enough to be interesting.
Okay.
I read 3 chapters last night or something. And I'm also reading other books at the same time, so it really pulled me in, and I thought, well, Brett's gonna love this because it's really got teacher complaints. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like complaining about how some students are really dumb and they're never going to graduate anyway.
I don't think I've ever had a kid who was too dumb to graduate. Ever.
Well,
I've always thought.
we're not talking about high school. It's a university, but you figure in the 1300s,
Yeah.
that They didn't really have schools, so
Right. You know that short story of mine with the giant crabs at the beginning?
yeah.
Today I was in the middle of a lesson and this thought popped up in my head that it's the wrong genre. That if I made it science fiction, it would work better. My kids are sitting there looking at me like I'm having a...
I kind of thought that's what it was.
Well, it kind of is, but it's not very clear. And
Yeah, I guess it kind of could go back and forth between. Oh,
well, I mean, there are definitely hints of a post-apocalyptic society, which is fine.
I didn't get post-apocalyptic because I didn't get. You're talking about the ones with the crustacean.
Yeah, they were hermit
Lack of
crabs.
a better word.
They were giant hermit crabs with the howdahs on top.
Right, but there was what was driving them.
Oh, you had aquatic people.
Right, and that's what I was saying. Crustaceans, for lack of a better word.
Oh, well, right.
That's
But-
the same story anyway. That's what I was asking about. So I kind of read it like it was meaning to be steampunky.
Well, it kind of was. I mean, it kind of was. I mean, it was. My idea was.
I also think of it as your what the hell's that author's name?
China Mayville.
Yeah, China Mayville. I kind of think of that as your China Mayville period.
Well, that's fine. You're, I would say that's accurate, but it's and that's I think one of the problems. It's derivative, I think, of his style, and if I were to take the basic idea, but really lean into the science fiction aspect of it instead of trying to go steampunk new weird, I think it might work better.
So take out the pot belly.
Well, take out this. It won't be a stove, but it would be something. I mean,
Well, that's what I was meaning. You know.
right? But I mean, something. There's still the overall concept is still there. Like he's still punished through body modification. You know, that's. But leading into
Punishment
more
by
of a
body modification.
what?
Punishment by body modification.
Yeah. What would you call having your?
I'm just stating it as a premise, I guess.
Yeah. So
I know I've read the story, but like what I'm thinking about is that that's an interesting concept in its own right.
that's just why I think the science fiction angle might work better, because it won't be. I mean, in science fiction, you get cyborgs all the time.
Here's
So-
the thing that I didn't get about that. That was the punishment was for theft, right?
Yeah.
But it didn't have anything to do. I don't know. It didn't have anything to do with.
Like he's not having his hands cut off or something like that.
Yeah, like not just that, but yeah, things that you would need to use to be a thief, right? So
Well, I kind of thought
that is the short of it that I'm trying to think of, I guess.
having to maintain a fire or die.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is or die. Like that's a severe punishment for theft.
Well, I agree. but that's kind of the horror aspect, I guess.
Okay, so it's a horror aspect.
Well, I mean, I think
No,
any
no.
body modification tends to be something horrific.
What's that?
I mean, most body modification stuff has some element. I mean, there's pain if nothing else, but my idea was that he could still function, like he still had his hands, so he could still do work, he could still hold a job, but trying to sneak through some place with, a wood-burning stove keeping you alive was
Definitely would make it difficult.
right. But yeah, I just think that if there could be other ways of making that a little bit more accessible by looking at the right or the right genre.
Yeah, well, genre is market. So you were right there when you're saying that.
Well, whatever.
Well, no, I mean that's why it was created. Didn't David Farland give a big lecture about that? Genre is basically deciding where to put the books on the bookshelf, so that it can get to the people that are going to read those types of books.
Right.
So that's marketing, right?
To some degree, yeah.
Well, what do you mean to some degree?
There's more.
What's the basic principle, precept, whatever, of marketing? Isn't it that to get it to the people who buy it, right? Or convince people to buy it?
Sort of. I mean, like, I see where you're going, and I don't think you're wrong per
Okay,
se.
so that was what's confusing me. You're saying sort of, like, I don't know what the alternative is.
Well, so with genre, I guess the way I look at it, beyond just marketing, like what market it goes to, genre has expectations for structure and form normally.
Right, because it's going to a market.
Well, but it's also, I mean, I don't know. I get what you're saying, and I don't think you're necessarily wrong. I just don't know if it's. I just don't know if
the simple version of it, and you can see the extended version of it.
Yeah.
But it's still the same thing. It's the simple principle that you're extending, that you're exponentiating. What's that?
I don't know. Extrapolating?
Yeah, well, either way, right?
Yeah.
You're taking it out as far as you can take it. So it's basically the principle, the idea is that you're wanting to sell books or sell stories or sell whatever to a certain established audience. But they're established because somebody already established them as genre. But that was for that purpose, to sell it, so you know where to find those books. So if you go in and look for a fantasy book, you're going to go into the fantasy section to look for a fantasy book, or speculative fiction, or sometimes they'll just call it science fiction altogether or whatever. But you know that we're talking about speculative fiction with a speculative element. But the reason that you're clumping those books together, for an example, as opposed to Stephen King just being shoved in the horror section.
Right.
Stephen King's not just shoved in the horror section anymore. He's in the regular fiction section.
Right.
He's in the regular fiction section because he writes more than just horror. So because he expanded his genres, they can just sell him on his name. So if you wanted to go look for Michael Crichton, where would you look?
I would assume science fiction.
You're assuming science fiction based on?
Most of what I know about him is from, I mean, I guess there's horror, but I still think of him mostly as science fiction.
He wrote ER.
Oh, I know.
That's not science fiction. He wrote. It's supposed to be Modern Hospital.
I know.
He wrote the 13th
Wait,
Warrior.
did he write ER? Did he write the?
He wrote ER because that was what Steven Spielberg was going to make for a movie before he saw Jurassic Park. But she wrote what became the 13th Warrior, which is Eaters of the Dead. And that is not fantasy or science fiction. It's historical fiction and maybe alternate history because he took the story of Ibn Faden and Beowulf and mashed them together into one story. But he didn't do the supernatural parts of Beowulf. He explained them as regular things of the time. It wasn't science because there was no dragon. It wasn't a dragon. It was cavalry with fire. So they weren't bears. They just wore bear headdresses. So I don't think that necessarily be science fiction. But that's probably due to the time period. In the time period, they had already had steam technology because the steam technology is from ancient Greece.
Hmm.
So basically, the answer is that you're going to find him in a regular fiction section. You might find some of his stuff, obviously,
Right.
in science fiction, but that's exactly what it is. That's because they're selling to a certain crowd that they've developed to know to look for certain types of things. What did Aldous Budrys say is the difference between science fiction and fantasy?
I don't know. Trees?
He said, I know it when I see it. That's what he said. The difference is what I define it as when I see it. Ben Bova told Orson Scott Card. The difference is whether you see sheet metal on the cover or whether you see trees and swords. But nowadays that's blurred, right?
Yeah.
So you have modern type fantasy, which is like Harry Potter type fantasy is not urban fantasy is another word for it. Starts with a C. Why am I drawing a blank?
I don't know.
It's kind of another word for current. Like, I would think of it as World War II on up. Maybe it's an S. I'm not coming up with it. It's going to drive me crazy because the minute that we're not talking about it anymore, it's going to pop right in my brain.
Probably.
So, like, if you're talking about your it's going to drive me crazy. If you're talking about contemporary, that's what it is, contemporary. I told you it's one of those words. Like, it is around our times. It's the times that we remember, we relate to, we think of as real. We don't think of as historical. Now, I wasn't alive in World War II. I wasn't alive until Vietnam, or right around Vietnam. So prior to that, it should be historical for me, but I don't think of it that way because I think of it as the same people, the same systems, the same milieu. it's just a more advanced version of the same milieu, right? So Harry Potter is a contemporary fantasy as opposed to urban fantasy, which is more monsters and more on the streets. Like that's the whole urban aspect is the on the streets dealing with that.
See, that's like never understood magical realism versus urban fantasy. Yes, we've heard of the Communist Manifesto.
Okay, so
You have a comment from Artie Farts. Hello, have you heard of the Communist Manifesto?
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know how that's relevant to the conversation, but maybe that's old. No? 46.
Would you like to hear more about it? No?
It failed. No, I don't need to hear more about it. I read enough of it. I don't need any extra. I don't want to hear about my comp either. Well, you're directly relatable.
I suppose.
Hitler was reading it when he wrote the other.
Oh.
I love how Marx can tell everybody to equal and share their money and all this other stuff when he was living off other people the whole time. Well, of course he wanted to have that society where he didn't have to get a job. What were we talking about? Oh, contemporary fantasy, right?
Yeah, contemporary fantasy, magical realism.
Oh, magical realism. Magical realism is, from what I understand, like ESP and pyrokinesis and things that they believe that you could really do with your mind.
If you say so.
Well, no, that's the difference. It's like it's not casting spells. Urban fantasy is still casting spells or fighting monsters in mythology. And that's fantasy, monsters, myth, or mythology, or magic, monsters, or mythology. But like, say if the story is about ESP or ghosts. Or producing ghosts, which is something that they maybe believe can happen, that you can open the door, there's a medium or whatever. The Illusionist.
Okay.
You're supposed to be left at the end of The Illusionist. Yeah, I guess that might be relevant that way. In The Illusionist, you're supposed to be left in the movie to wonder whether or not it was supposed to be real magic or just a trick.
Okay.
In the short story, The Illusionist, it is true. Like, he does really disappear. He's also his direct competition. So, have you read The Prestige?
Have I read it? No.
I quite like that too. I think you might like reading that because as opposed to the movie, it really kind of shows you both sides.
Okay.
It's kind of written almost epistolic, where one character tells part of the story, and then the other character tells his side of that. Like, neither one of them are actually talking to each other. They're both writing it in a diary or something like that.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty interesting, and it's set late 1800s, early 1900s, and it's playing off the same things that cooked Houdini, where he was convinced that he could find the spirits, and people held seances all the time, and so there was none of that in the movie, but they were competing with that kind of thing. They would compete magically in a magic show, and then one or the other of them would claim to be a medium, and they would hold a seance, and then the other one would show up and screw their magic trick up, and it's really more interesting. Not that it wasn't interesting as a movie, but to me it's a little bit more interesting as not a movie. I think this is pretty close to done.
All right.
I just haven't signed it yet.
Oh.
Anything look like it's missing?
I like how I blew it up just to make sure.
Well, I can't see it. It's super small on my screen too. So.
Oh well, it's rather large on mine.
I'll go to my banners, my brand, and take my Gordox pub down for a second.
Looks good to me.
That looks pretty clean. Chest looks pretty clean. The hair looks pretty good. My wife actually said she liked the way the hair looks, so that's a big deal in my home.
I am impressed with the hair. Like, I'm just, especially like his back, like where the light hits, and then it's just, yeah, I think it's great. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that is the fun stuff, but you have to lay all the you have to lay the modeling stuff down and the face down before. I went over the background with black because I still kind of want it to look. That's what I figured. It kind of looks horror noir with the green tinted light being the background light and cast on the hat, but there's a light in the foreground and then there's a light in the background that you see. That's where the hair comes out.
No, I think it's great.
Now what do I sign it with? Oscar Martin? I'm not going to sign it with paint. Thinking maybe about doing a giveaway for it. Part of me says that would be a pretty good piece to have around for a giveaway.
Yeah.
Part of me is like, but it's kind of part of my story, so do I want to give it away? The only thing I really don't like about the Boscos, they are still they're still acrylics, but they come off so thin. You have to go over them several times. I was thinking if I can get this thing going, then I can maybe offer to do other people's characters too.
Yeah.
Alright, so that's that. That's a wrap on the H for Gouda. Yeah, I'm gonna kill this right. See how that looks. Is that clean? That should be a little bit greener because it's a yellow light, a softer light. Did you hear me? I'm talking to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking to myself.
I think so.
Well, I just asked you. I said should be a greener look because it's the yellow light, the softer light.
So, what's the question?
Does it have a greener look?
No. I don't think so. I think it looks fine. Huh.
Well, it does have that feel though. That noir feel that I wanted. I should probably leave that there for it to dry. Yeah, I'm gonna. Put them in the stream. If you want to talk off screen, you can.
Okay.
I have some time ahead of time. Alright. Thank you all for coming. All 2 of you that showed up for a little. If you like content, hit like and subscribe.
Yep.
Good night. God bless. Love you all.
Peace.